Today I'd like to discuss an issue which is gaining notoriety by the day, and that is prescription drug addiction. Opioid abuse in the United States is second only to cannabis use amongst teens, and 1 in 10 high school students claim to have used Vicodin, for example. So let's get into discussing what drugs we're talking about here. So I'm going to break abusable prescription drugs down into 3 main classes to make it easier for us. So firstly, there are opioids, which consist of OxyContin, Vicodin, perhaps also tramadol, Demerol, and drugs like this. Now these drugs are generally prescribed for pain management initially and have a huge abusable potential. Secondly, we'd have central nervous system depressants, which are usually a drug class called benzodiazepines. So family names for those might be Valium, Xanax, Klonopin. So these drugs are usually prescribed initially for anxiety or perhaps for sleep problems. And lastly, I'm going to talk about stimulant type drugs that are prescribed. That would be predominantly Adderall and Ritalin, usually initially prescribed for attention deficit disorder in adults or perhaps ADHD in children. So what are the signs that you or somebody around you may be abusing prescription drugs? Well, number 1, drugs are prescribed to be taken in a responsible manner, so your doctor will have given you a dosage which you are expected to stick to. So if you find yourself using more than you were advised to, increasing the dosage, then that's not a good sign. Now that may then lead to trying to procure more of the drug because you may use it before you were supposed to have finished it. So going to other doctors and attempting to procure more of the drug, we call doctor shopping. So that's another sign of abuse. If that's not possible, perhaps trying to obtain illicit supplies of the drug off the street, that's another sign. Now, if you are using your medications responsibly, but they're going missing, that's the sign that somebody around you may be abusing them. Or if somebody you know has a prescription and they keep losing their drugs and having to go back and get more, that's a sign that would alert most doctors to the potential sign for abuse. So what are the signs physically that somebody might be abusing prescription drugs? Well, with benzodiazepines and opioids, they're both depressant drugs, so they're going to be causing drowsiness and sleepiness in general. So if the person you know or if you yourself are very drowsy and sleepy and not able to concentrate, perhaps nodding off in mid-conversation, things like that, that's a sign that the person is taking more than they should be. With stimulant drugs like Adderall and Ritalin, it may well be the opposite, so the person will be more talkative and stimulated than usual. So what are the signs of an ongoing and developing addiction? Well, similar to other addictions, the individual might become quite irate and angry if you challenge them and ask them if they're addicted. They might be quite sneaky in terms of their answers to you. When you ask them where they've been or what they've been doing, you might not get sufficient replies. And they might just be, in general, quite withdrawn and isolated. So that's exactly the same as it would even be with illicit drug abuse. So what are the risks associated with the abuse of these types of prescription drugs? Well, it's fairly well known that opioids like OxyContin can be crushed in order to be abused. So when they're crushed down, they can be snorted, smoked, or injected. But both opioids and benzodiazepines have a risk in the sense that they're a depressant drug. So particularly when they're mixed with other depressant drugs like alcohol or mixed with each other, they can cause respiratory depression and the heart rate drops dramatically because they're depressing the central nervous system and they're at risk of overdose. Also, we would say a main risk of these 2 types of drugs in particular would be tolerance, increasing tolerance. So you need more and more of the drug to get high, and then eventually you're going to have to withdraw from it. So when you try to stop doing it, you're going to experience quite profound withdrawals. Now with opioids, the withdrawals are very, very unpleasant, but not necessarily life-threatening. With benzodiazepines, the withdrawal can be much more severe, can be life-threatening, and in both cases, of course, needs to be conducted under medical supervision. But with benzodiazepines, you may well be looking at a much longer taper if you go into treatment and decide to withdraw from this drug, then it may well take quite a long time.